Hey there. Ever feel like the California workers' comp system is like a maze? You know, especially when you're dealing with an injury, it can feel kind of overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
But don't worry because today we're going on a deep dive to help you navigate one of the most important parts, and that's evidence-based medical guidelines.
It sounds intimidating, but really all it means is making sure you're getting the most effective treatment
Right.
based on solid research,
Mhm.
not just someone's best guess.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So where do these guidelines like actually live? Like, is there a giant book with all the rules or?
You could say that. In California, it's called the Medical Treatment Utilization Schedule,
Okay.
or MTUS. Think of it as a roadmap for doctors treating work-related injuries.
A roadmap.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah.
So does every doctor in California have one of these MTUS roadmaps tucked away in their office?
They should.
Right.
And you can even find it online, though some parts might require a trip to a DWC office.
Hmm.
It's been revised as recently as 2015 to be super clear. This is the standard of care for work injuries in California. Standard of care, meaning doctors are expected to follow it. But what if my situation is a bit unique?
That's where it gets interesting. The MTUS is assumed to be correct about treatment, what we call presumption of correctness. But there are two scenarios where a doctor might deviate.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear about these exceptions.
First, if your condition just isn't covered in the MTUS, it happens.
Sure.
Second, if there's really strong scientific evidence that a different treatment is better for you. But the key here is that the doctor has to prove that this other treatment is truly necessary for your recovery.
So it's not a my friend told me about this great tea kind of situation.
Right,
It's
yeah.
got to be serious evidence.
Exactly. And this brings us to another crucial point, recovery. The MTUS isn't just about masking pain. It's about getting you back to functioning in your everyday life. We call that functional improvement. So if I'm understanding this right, it's not enough for me to just say, hey, doc, my back still hurts.
Yeah.
There has to be a real difference in how I'm able to, do things.
You're getting it. Your doctor needs to be able to see and document those improvements at every visit. This affects your treatment plan, whether you can go back to work, and even potential disability benefits.
Wow. So understanding this MTUS thing is important for so many reasons. It's not just about the treatment itself, it's about the whole process.
And this is why we're doing this deep dive. Because even knowing the basics can really empower you in your recovery. You become a partner in your own healthcare, not just a passenger.
I love that. Okay, so we've got this roadmap, the MTUS, and it's all about getting us back to functioning well. But what happens when things don't go as planned? What if the recovery takes longer than expected?
That's a huge issue, and it actually brings us to one of the biggest challenges in the workers' comp system. Delayed recovery, which is often linked to chronic pain. Get this. Just 10% of cases in California end up using a whopping 75% of the resources.
That's a staggering statistic. I can see why delayed recovery and chronic pain are such a big deal.
They are. That's why early identification is key. Imagine being able to spot those at risk as early as 2 weeks after an injury, just using some targeted questions.
2 weeks. That seems pretty fast. But it makes sense. The earlier you catch something, the better. I am curious, though. Why do some people have this delayed recovery while others bounce back more quickly? Is it all about how bad the initial injury was?
That's where the MTUS gets really interesting. It acknowledges that we can't just focus on the physical injury itself. We need to look at the whole picture, the biopsychosocial model.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Biopsychosocial model. What does that even mean?
It means recognizing that pain is influenced by more than just your physical injury, your mental state, your cultural background, even your interactions with your workplace and the healthcare system can all play a role.
Wait, so you're saying that even how I feel about my injury or how my boss treats me while I'm recovering can affect how quickly I heal?
Exactly. It's all connected, and the MTUS acknowledges that.
So how does the MTUS actually address this mind-body connection? Does it have like a special chapter on positive thinking?
It doesn't quite work like that, but it does recommend a powerful tool called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which can be incredibly helpful in managing the psychological and social factors that influence pain.
CBT, isn't that what athletes use to like improve their mental game? It seems a bit unexpected in the context of workers' comp.
You're not wrong. Athletes use it, but so do people struggling with anxiety, depression, and yes, even chronic pain. And here's why it's relevant to the MTUS. CBT goes beyond traditional talk therapy. It equips you with very specific techniques to manage pain and build resilience.
Techniques like, give us some examples.
Think things like cognitive reframing, where you learn to challenge those negative thought spirals we all get stuck in. There's mindfulness, which helps you focus on the present moment instead of worrying about the future. And then there are practical tools like breathing exercises and pacing techniques to help you gradually increase your activity without overdoing it.
So CBT is almost like giving you a mental toolkit to deal with the ups and downs of recovery. I'm starting to see why the MTUS would recommend it, but is there actual science to back this up? It sounds almost too good to be true.
The science is actually pretty amazing. It all comes down to this emerging field called neuroplasticity, which basically means that your brain can change and adapt based on your experiences.
Hold on, you're telling me that CBT can actually rewire my brain?
It can. Studies have shown that CBT can reduce activity in the areas of the brain associated with fear anxiety and those pesky negative thoughts that just keep replaying in your head. At the same time, it can boost activity in the areas linked to rational thought and distraction.
Wow, so it's not just about feeling better, it's about actually changing the way your brain processes pain signals. That's pretty incredible.
It is. And it highlights how the MTUS is evolving to incorporate a more holistic view of health and recovery.
Okay, so the MTUS is like this living, breathing document, constantly being updated with the latest and greatest in medical knowledge. But how does that actually happen? Who decides what goes into it?
Great question. It's all thanks to a group of dedicated experts called the Medical Evidence Evaluation Advisory Committee, or MEAC for short.
The NEAC sounds important. What do they do exactly?
They're like the guardians of the MTUS. They review new research and decide whether it's strong enough to warrant updates to the treatment guidelines.
So if a new study comes out saying, hey, this therapy is super effective for back pain, the MEAC would take a look and decide if it should be included in the MTUS.
Precisely. And they come from all different medical specialties, so it's not just one perspective shaping the guidelines.
That makes sense. You want a well-rounded team making those decisions. It's kind of reassuring to know that there's this whole committee constantly working behind the scenes to make sure the MTUS is as up-to-date and accurate as possible.
It is. But as with any system, there are always going to be nuances and complexities.
Oh, I'm sure. I bet it's not all smooth sailing.
Not always. Sometimes the MTUS can feel a bit rigid, especially when dealing with less common injuries or those with a significant psychosocial component.
You mean like when the mental and emotional aspects of the injury are playing a big role in the recovery process?
Exactly. In those cases, strictly adhering to the MTUS might not always address the individual's unique needs.
So what happens then? Does the doctor just throw up their hands and say, well, the MTUS doesn't cover this, so good luck?
Of course not. Doctors are still obligated to provide appropriate care, but it can sometimes lead to disputes over treatment recommendations, especially with insurance companies.
Ah, that makes sense. Insurance companies want to make sure they're only paying for treatments that are proven effective.
Right. That's part of it. But remember, the MTUS isn't just about saving money. It's about ensuring that you're getting the most effective care possible. And sometimes what's most effective might fall outside the strict guidelines, especially when dealing with complex cases.
This makes me think back to the two exceptions you mentioned earlier. When a condition isn't covered in the MTUS, or when there's strong evidence supporting a different treatment, it sounds like those situations might come up more often than we realize.
They can, especially as our understanding of pain and recovery continues to evolve. The MEAC does its best to keep the MTUS as current as possible, but it's a constant game of catch-up with medical advancements.
So it's important for both doctors and patients to be aware of these limitations and to advocate for treatments that are truly necessary, even if they require going a bit off script.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between evidence-based care and individualized treatment plans.
This has been incredibly helpful. We've gone from this vague idea of evidence-based guidelines to understanding how the MTUS actually works, how it's structured, how it's updated, and even some of the challenges it presents.
We've also learned that the MTUS recognizes the importance of both the physical and psychosocial aspects of recovery, which I think is a huge step forward.
It is, but I'm guessing there's still more to uncover, right?
There is. In our final part, we'll be looking at what the future holds for the MTUS and how it's adapting to new technologies and approaches to healthcare.
I'm ready for part 3. Welcome back to our deep dive into the MTUS chair.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've explored the ins and outs of this crucial document, from its structure and updates to its challenges and controversies.
And now as we wrap up, I'm kind of curious about what the future holds for the MTUS. Is it going to stay the same, or is it evolving to keep up with all the changes in healthcare?
Well, the MTUS is definitely not standing still. It's constantly being reviewed and updated by the MEAC to make sure it reflects the latest scientific evidence and best practices.
So it's like a smartphone, always getting the latest software updates.
Oh, right.
Keep it running smoothly.
Exactly. The MEAC is always on the lookout for new research, new treatments, and new ways to improve care for injured workers.
This makes me think about things like telehealth and personalized medicine. Are those having an impact on the MTUS?
Absolutely. Telehealth, for example, has become incredibly important, especially after the pandemic, and the MTUS is adapting to recognize the benefits of remote consultations and virtual therapies.
That's great news. It makes getting care so much easier, especially if you live in a rural area or have trouble getting around clean. What about personalized medicine? How is that shaping the MTUS?
Well, personalized medicine is all about tailoring treatment to you as an individual. It
Mhm.
considers your genes, your lifestyle, and other factors, and the MTUS is starting to incorporate that approach, moving away from a one-size-fits-all model.
So it's not just about what works for people in general, it's about what's most likely to work for me specifically.
Precisely. It recognizes that we all respond differently to treatments, and what works for one person might not work for another.
This is so exciting. It feels like we're on the cusp of a whole new era of healthcare, one that's more tailored to our individual needs. But it can also feel a bit overwhelming with all these changes happening. What advice would you give our listeners who are trying to make sense of the MTUS and how it all works?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
Here are a few key things to remember. First, knowledge is power. The more you understand about the MTUS, the better you can advocate for yourself and make sure you're getting the right care.
So do your research, read up on the MTUS, and don't be shy about asking questions.
Exactly. Second, be an active participant in your care. Don't just sit back and let things happen. Talk to your doctor, ask about different treatment options, and make your voice heard.
It's your health, your recovery.
Mm.
You have a right to be involved in those decisions.
Absolutely. And finally, remember, you're not alone in this. There are resources out there to help you navigate the workers' compensation system and understand your rights.
So whether it's talking to a lawyer who specializes in workers' comp, reaching out to an advocacy group, or even just connecting with friends or family who've been through something similar, you have a whole network of support.
It's about finding that community, sharing your experiences, and learning from others who have walked this path before.
That's such an important point. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of the MTUS to its future direction. I feel like I could teach a class on this now.
I think you could. You've really absorbed a ton of information.
But seriously, I hope this deep dive has been valuable for our listeners. Whether you're an injured worker, a healthcare professional, or just someone who's curious about this system, I believe that understanding the MTUS can empower you to make informed decisions.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, empowering people to take control of their health and their recovery.
So well said. As we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. The MTUS, for all its complexities, is a tool designed to help people heal and get back on their feet. Let's not lose sight of that.
Let's use this tool wisely with compassion and understanding to ensure that injured workers get the care and support they need.
Beautifully put. And with that, we say farewell, fellow knowledge seekers. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay well.